Welcome to another Trial Guides tip of the day this Thursday, July 20th, 2023. Today's tip comes from Damages Evolving, and we have Artemis Malekpour here to read it for us.
Thank you. No matter what your clients say, there's a good chance that they've agonized over what part they may have played in their injuries or their loved ones' wrongful deaths. It's a vulnerability that the defense can sniff out while you never knew it was there. So whether voiced or not, always consider it a concern that you need to address directly with your client well before the defense can take an advantage.
Wow, this is something that I think a lot of lawyers just ignore, and it's really important to talk about. So how do we deal with that? Let's say an extreme where a parent says, "Oh, if only I hadn't invited Junior over to have pizza that night, he wouldn't have been on the road and been killed." I think most lawyers say, "No, no, no, no," like they want to fix it or not deal with it. What's a more skillful way to deal with that?
Well, first, you're lucky if your client does admit to it, because sometimes your client won't even admit to it. It just sits there with them and they don't even want to admit it to themselves that they have guilt about it, that, oh, if I had only done this. So certainly if your client voices it, you want to absolutely deal with it, because if the client believes this, certainly your jurors are going to deal with it, and then it's going to also come up in depositions. But if your client doesn't voice that guilt and you think, well, the defense isn't going to go there, the defense says your client's not on the verdict form, that doesn't matter. It still will somehow seep through how your client talks about what happened, how your client deals with, sometimes, we see clients who get really, they kind of shut down, or they don't seem to express emotion. It's almost like a defense mechanism. So how your client ends up talking about things, if they're super weepy and jurors don't understand what that's about, if they get defensive with the defense attorney, they're combative, aggressive, all those things. What's driving that? What's behind that? And often it's because they haven't settled this in themselves to feel like I've cleansed myself, if I know I did everything I could have done. And because they haven't, they don't feel that they've come to terms with it within their own selves, then it becomes difficult for them to express themselves truly and to really point the finger where it should be in terms of what the defense did wrong. So you've got to get that, you've got to deal with it. And whether it's whether it's in your office, out of your office, in their home, maybe you're not the one who can deal with it, depending on who you are and what kind of attorney you are and how much empathy and how much ability you have to relate to a client. Maybe it's someone else on your trial team who does it, but someone has to have that conversation with your client in a trusted, warm, protective environment to be able to pull that out and for them to express all the grief and all the anxiety that they themselves feel about what happened. So again, the focus can turn in trial and in their depositions towards the actual wrongdoers.
Wow. So no shortcuts to that. It's really spending a lot of time with your client, learning their story. And if you can't do that, to find those few great experts out there who can.
And knowing how to ask or how to approach the subject with this, it's not a cookie cutter, one size fits all for every person. I mean, for some people, just being able to sit in their house and then for you to come at them with some compassion can open up the floodgates. For other people, it can shut them down. So it's really and that's part of why we say you must spend time with your client and get to know who your client is, to be able to know how to talk with them and in a way that gets information from them that they feel comfortable sharing. And again, it may not be you who's in the position to do that, but it has to be someone on your team to be able to, before the defense takes advantage. And even though your client is not on the verdict form, jurors can still potentially blame your client, especially, and we know with defensive or negative attribution, that idea that I would have done better, I would have protected, my loved one better, this would never have happened to me. If we know jurors will do that, we got to know that the client's doing that as well. So how do we take that and then focus it, put it in, take it, as Gary Johnson would call that, kind of judo law, turn it against the defense. So now it becomes a strength of ours as opposed to a weakness that we have to deal with.
That's great. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today, Artemis.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Artemis and David Ball work together and are wonderful trial consultants, and they co-wrote with Courtney and Nick Rowley, Damage is Evolving. If you don't have it, go out and get it.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thanks. You too.
Let's take a deep breath together and be grateful to be alive this Thursday. May the work we do today help to reduce suffering in the world, reduce suffering in the lives of our clients, in our lives, and in the world. May our efforts help to repair the world. May we fiercely and compassionately advocate for our clients, champion their stories, and do so from a place of compassion and wisdom. I'm going to ring a bell 3 times now. This can take you into a meditation practice, a prayer practice, or just remind you, wake up, it's Thursday. Go out, do good things, and have fun while you're doing it.